Hey everyone, Chase Elleby and Joel Williams from Williams Elleby coming to you today with video number 26 in our series of 52 weeks of personal injury. And today we're going to talk about probably maybe the top 3 questions we get asked all the time is how long does an injury case last? Joel, how long does it last?
You know, I'm going to give you the legal answer that we always give, and it depends. There are so many different variables, and we'll try to go through a few of them with you today. That's going to determine how long your injury case is going to last. But I'm going to start with what kind of case you have. So, for example, products liability cases or medical malpractice cases involve many more witnesses, more experts, more discretion as to what could have been done, what might have been done. For example, if you think about a products case, you got to figure out, all right, is this a manufacturing defect? Is this a design defect? Is this a breach of implied warranty? Blah, blah, blah. You know, all these different things you need experts for, and they can take a really long time. Sometimes, you know, if you go all the way to trial, it may take 3 to 4 years, and then if it goes up on appeal, which sometimes complicated cases will, it could last 5 or 6 years. On the other hand, if you have a rather simple case where somebody runs right into the back of somebody, driving, and then that person injures their neck, they go to the chiropractor for 3 months, and then you can reach a settlement fairly quickly. They may not last that long. You may not even have to file a lawsuit. You might just be able to wrap it up in 4 or 5 months. So it really just depends on the type of case. But there are other factors as well.
Right, and you bring up a good point, you know, in the distinction between a claim, right, the pre-suit side, I always call it like on the front end. Some claims can last all the way up until the statute of limitations, which is 2 years. You know, typically we like to try to get our cases resolved without having to file a lawsuit if we can, but a lot of times we can't, so we're happy to file the lawsuit. But that claims period, you know it's going to be capped at 2 years because if you don't do anything, then you got to file that lawsuit. But you know, depending on the severity of the injury, depending on how much insurance there is, what the medical bills are and things like that, it could take 2 months or it could take all the way up to 2 years before you have to file that lawsuit. And then once that lawsuit's filed, you know, to your point, you know, you've got 30 days to file an answer. You got at least 6 months of discovery. You've got, you know, court-ordered mediations. You've got trials. You've got appeals. So it could last, you know, years beyond that. So it really does just depend. That's like a classic legal answer for most everything. But yeah, it certainly does just depend.
Yeah, and so there are some examples of cases that can resolve really quickly. Mm-hmm. So for example, imagine a car wreck and you have a minimum limits policy, which in the state of Georgia is $25,000. But somebody goes to the emergency room via life flight helicopter and has to have emergency surgery and all this kind of stuff, and they have $200,000 in medical bills within 3 or 4 days, the insurance company is not going to fight you very hard. Right. When they've only got $25,000 of coverage. They're probably going to just drive the check to your lawyer's office and drop it off. So that case will settle pretty quickly. But it's really when the injuries do not exceed the insurance limits, the amount that somebody should be compensated for them anyway. And when there are more difficult factual disputes in the case, I think that really can drag them out longer.
Yeah, and also too, I think it's important to keep in mind that you don't want to not know the full extent of your injuries before you resolve a case, right? So a lot of times some clients are like, okay, well, can we go ahead and knock this out now? Can we be done now? I'm like, well, we could. But what you've just told me is that you're going to have to go back to the doctor in 3 months to kind of get a follow-up and see what, you know, how you're progressing. So let's just wait. There's no harm in waiting. There's harm in settling and then coming to find out 3 months later you've got more injuries. But there's no harm in waiting to get all the treatment that you need then to assess and evaluate from there.
One other thing I was thinking about when you were talking about that is I think it also depends on what court you're in. Mm-hmm. Because for smaller claims in Georgia, if you file it in magistrate court, mm-hmm. you can usually get a hearing date fairly quickly.
Yeah, usually in 60 days sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it may be taking a little bit longer right now because all courts are kind of working through this COVID backlog as we sit here in June of 2022. Mm-hmm. But that'll clear out at some point and we'll kind of get back to where we're normally at. But magistrate court cases, you can get a hearing pretty fast. If you're in superior court in the state of Georgia, it may take a little bit longer because you know, you've got divorce cases you have to wait on to get through. You also have felony criminal cases that have the take priority. State court, a little faster than superior court sometimes. And then, of course, there's federal court. And surprisingly, federal court can be pretty fast because they have very strict deadlines and rules that you must follow to help expedite the processing of the case. So.
Right. Yeah, well, I think we've covered a lot. I think if, one takeaway for sure is that there's no one size fits all when it comes to the timeline of a case because there's so many different factors to consider. So,
yeah, just because your buddy's case was able to get resolved in 3 weeks
right.
doesn't mean yours will. Just because your buddy's case took 7 years to resolve doesn't mean your case will take that long. It really just depends on the facts of your specific situation. So, yep. All right, well, that'll wrap it up. If this video has been helpful to you, we'd appreciate you giving us a thumbs up, subscribing to our channel, or just inserting a comment in the section below if you can think of anything that would add to the conversation of how long personal injury cases should take. Otherwise, we will see you next week for week number 27 out of our video series of 52 weeks of personal injury.